Hi everybody, welcome to Raising Vibrations, you with Simon. And today I'm excited to be sharing with you something that I'm currently working on at the moment, and something that my own consciousness is exploring. And I feel super amped to be able to share this with you today. A lot of the content that I'm going to be sharing with you today is, quite widely available on the internet. It's definitely not something revolutionary from the point of view of the work and the exploration that has taken place. But the thing that I'm finding the most fascinating from what I'm about to share with you today is how it can connect to astrology and how it can ground the relationship that we have to the more metaphysical dimensions of ourselves and the physical dimensions of ourselves. Okay. And so I've, at this point in time, really been struggling with the relationships that we have to spirituality, and the kind of divide that we create between the left and right brain people, and also the nature of how that division causes there to be an incredible amount of time wasted upon stuff that, in my opinion, really just stops us from really getting into the heart and to the meat of stuff about why we incarnate onto this dimension to begin with. So this is my attempt at the moment to share with you what I'm currently researching at this stage and working with and making correlations to, empowering astrology, and then hopefully at the same time giving you this opportunity to see your astrology chart in a way that is not always like pronounced or expressed in the sort of way that astrology works outside in the world. So when you go and read on the internet and you, okay, Mars and this means that, etc. What does it mean for you specifically, and how does it actually affect your life, and how can you actually make concrete, practical actions that actually allows the astrology to manifest in your life in a more profound way. This is also a video to share with you a up and coming workshop that I'm created. It begins on the 9th of April, and at the end of this video I have a small sort of like introduction to how you can get online with that process. And so what I'm going to share with you today is a segment of the overall soul alignment and empowerment course that I'll be teaching on the 9th of April. So do check that out. All the information will be in the description below and on my website. All right. So the first thing that I wanted to bring to everybody's attention was the nature of soul. Okay, so evolutionary astrology looks at the astrology charts and the nature of our lives and says we have desire, and in each of us, that desire moves us in a specific direction. We get inspired, excited as we move in that direction, and the Pluto placement amongst with of course Neptune and the moon activates that entire process, which is fascinating because it's so real. I mean, just understanding the nature of that in itself and relating it to your astrology chart can provide you with profound insight and clarity and alignment. So the first thing to understand about soul alignment when it comes to your life is to understand your Pluto placement and to recognize that in Pluto itself, there is a representation of choice. And that choice is linked with something that moves you in a direction. And that movement in that direction must come from something that is inspirational, okay? And the vehicle that you use to allow that inspiration and desire to actually move is the self-identity, okay? So an example that I could use that's very real in this case is the fact that you're watching this in itself is a combined desire for you to be in some way, shape or form intrigued about what this was about, and me creating the choice and desire to share with you the content that I'm inspired about sharing. And the vehicle that we use is kind of raising vibrations is an identity that you associate with, and of course your name, and that's the entity, right? My name as well. Does everybody really get that understanding? So in the astrology chart, the water elements reflect the natural way that you spiritualize your life. And that spiritualization comes through desire, inspiration, emotional attachment. Okay? Again, my emotional attachment to feeling this inspired desire regarding sharing this content, okay? And that's why I'm here. That's why we're watching this. This is why this has manifested itself. Now, from the point of view of your whole entire story, your soul in some way, shape, or form has these unresolved emotional attachments that you need to experience in your life in order to come to the conclusion that the desire that is outside of yourself is essentially something that cannot fulfill the void that exists within, i.e., to return to love. So we go about our merry ways, chasing desire after desire after desire, eventually at some point coming to the realization that the external validation and experience was really just us becoming deeply aware of our own native reasons as to why we did this. So what you're looking at here is a diagram of the astrological wheel where everything begins with that desire that is influenced by the nature of inspiration or idealism, again, and then Cancer, the moon in the fourth house, reflects the nature of how that gets actualized. And in each of your birth charts, there's this very clear paradigm of how that operates. So soul alignment is becoming aware of Pluto and desires and facilitating them in your life so that you can cut away the clutter and distraction about who am I, what am I supposed to be doing, and so on and so forth. And as you deepen that connection to yourself, you become more awake to the reasons why you incarnated. So the soul empowerment or soul alignment is realizing that within yourself. And we will use your astrology chart in the actual course to be able to identify that for you specifically so that you can become more awake to those things. Okay, so that's that. Okay, soul alignment and then empowerment, right? Empowerment coming through making the choices within yourself to understand where you are desiring to become stronger. And Pluto, of course, reflects that need for osmosis, okay? But then you have the north and south nodes of the astrology chart, as well as these Pluto experiences. Now, every single one of us in some way, shape, or form is interested in astrology because we want to, A, know the future, B, understand ourselves more deeply, C, understand our evolution. So we come here, we naturally associate ourselves with these experiences and hope for something, and you watch it and you grow and learn and you activate it in your life. And the nodal axis in the astrology chart reflects the karmic dynamics that naturally gets associated with your soul. So in my case, which will bring up my chart after this, there is the south node in Sagittarius and the north node in Gemini, and it reflects the nature of how to evolve one's desires. Yet we will always stay in our south nodes and in our Pluto placements because those reflect empowered states of our lives that really reflect comfortability and amongst other things that we can use to essentially feel that we don't need to challenge our need for confronting our limitations, okay? But how do we actually go about creating soul awareness, and how do we actually go about creating our fulfillment and empowerment and actualizing our north nodes? So this part, i.e. the brain itself and how it responds to the physical world, needs to be intimately understood, in my opinion, to actually have an effective way of understanding the plethora of information that is out there regarding how to actualize yourself through astrology. Okay, this is like, it makes so much sense, and it makes so much sense to me now that if you're, say for instance, somebody that has got the south node in, say for instance, Sagittarius, and you have that south node conjunct Uranus, and Uranus is squaring Mars. Do you think that the potential and possibility for you to be able to move into your north node will be relatively easy, or do you think that that potential would be slightly challenging? And in most cases, without even having that symbolism in itself, the answer is going to be yes, it's going to be challenging. And again, it comes down to the simple need for consistency to make myself feel good, and also our more sleeping states of consciousness that doesn't allow us to activate and move into directions that make us feel uncomfortable, challenging our fears of anxiety, of separation, and so on. So how does the brain connect to these things that I'm talking about, right? Well, firstly, desire and inspiration is really something that has a metaphysical terminology to it. We can't really grab desire, and we really can't grab inspiration. Yet simultaneously, there must be a physical correlation to them. So the research that I've done so far correlates to desire emanating from soul, which again is the entire body in itself, which again is abstract and can't really be touched. But from a physical perspective, it is actually Mars and Pluto that have a direct correlation towards the way that we actualize ourselves. So this part over here, i.e. the reptilian brain, reflects that Mars energy where those desires get actualized through. It's that impulsive movement that allows us to go in specific directions and actualize these forms of desire and inspiration, okay? The limbic system in itself, which is an incredibly detailed system, and the limbic system in itself is a very short description of many different types of systems that exist within it, including the pineal gland. So what happens here is that when we have a desire, there must be something that emotionally moves us, okay? So therefore, we have emotions naturally filled with either inspiration, excitement, joy, or fear, or negativity, okay? Now, the reptilian, or not the neocortex in itself, which is this part over here, and its different types of sort of sections, is what would be associated with Saturn and Uranus, okay? And Saturn and Uranus have a correlation to that because Uranus is very much about those aspects of ourselves that we've developed where we've become more and more understanding of reality and nature and so on and so forth, okay? This expanded version of ourselves. They're not like operating in a very reptilian slash very primitive sense. We're operating in a more sort of, we can do mathematics and etc. We can read and so on and so forth through logical equations. So the Saturn part of it is that in order for us to respond to our reality, we need to have certain definitions that give us an ability to interact with it. So right now, evolution designed brain, or the evolutionary designed brain, has a specific definition to it, and it's the frontal cortex responding to those words, and then our emotional responses or connections to those words give us an idea of how we can associate. So word association as an example. So the whole entire three segments of the brain has our way of responding to reality. And this has a direct relationship to the astrology. Now the connection comes in this place. What happens if Mars and Uranus, or say for instance you have Uranus conjunct the South Node, and that Uranus correlating to disintegration, fracturing, trauma, shock, breaking free, etc. And it's conjunct South Node, meaning that your early life imprinting and environments would naturally have these experiences of shock, trauma, disassociation, and attachment come from it. Imagine how the limbic system, which is directly associated with all of the emotional responses, has had a collection of fear experiences, and then when you are needing to go into your North Node and wanting to actualize yourself and you feel this creative sense of destiny, this actual part of your brain prevents you from actualizing it because, number one, you associate all experiences of going in new directions with a sense of anxiety, fear. And with a recent study that was done, the amygdala actually has a direct correlation to post-traumatic stress disorder being a way that it actually is enlarged. Okay, it enlarges itself if there is a lot of post-traumatic stress disorder that is associated with that person. So the empowerment comes in the realization that in order for you to make choices going forward in your life, you would need to recognize the natural way that you are emotionally responding to things and objectify it, saying, this time right now is not of the past, it's this moment that is very different, i.e. rationalizing and understanding the difference in the time zones. Because the limbic system and its components doesn't have any time frame to it. It's only the neocortex and the definitions that we as human beings have developed over time that gives us that ability to understand in a linear perspective. But from the limbic system's perspective, it just goes, hey, you triggered me. This is a negative response. I didn't enjoy it. And the last time this happened, it wasn't safe, so therefore I'm not going to act. So you can imagine the amount of stuff that we don't actualize in our lives because of the unresolved emotional imprinting that we have from childhood, as well as other parts of ourselves that stop us and prevent us from actualizing because of fear or anxiety, etc. And this is just a dimension of what it is that we're talking about. You know, the astrology comes in here because you look at the symbols and say, okay, Saturn's actually having a negative square towards the moon. This must be in some way, shape, or form reflecting a soul that has incredible challenges regarding authority. And mom and pop probably didn't have a good relationship to themselves. And there is an underdeveloped prefrontal cortex, or even a suppressed limbic system experience, leading to a soul that has actually, in some way, shape, or form, unactualized emotions or depression or feelings of futility, and so on and so forth. So how does somebody actualize themselves in reading astrology when the actual physical part of ourselves is wounded because of our relationship to the nature of our astrology chart and making those correlations? So it's incredibly profound, and I'm really, really, really like jumping out of my seat, just super excited about actually, developing this kind of research and expanding upon this process. And this picture over here on the right hand side just reflects these three stems: Mars, Pluto, of course, being that over there. This is the moon and Neptune, because inspiration and dopamine levels, etc., are the same thing. Physicality, dopamine and serotonin; inspiration and ecstasy, the metaphysical approach. And then the neocortex being the representation of how those outward judgments and stimuli interact with the limbic system in itself, and how do we experience it. So really, really strong food for thought here, and the depth that we can go into in terms of astrology. So I wanted to use this chart over here to kind of give an illustration of what this course is about, and how you can actually look at your own chart to objectify the nature of the soul's journey and what type of challenges you can generally face and what type of karmic wounding you might carry with you in that way. And, obviously to interpret these symbols in itself requires a certain percentage of astrology understanding. But somebody like this, for instance, that has Mars Venus in the 8th house Virgo, is most likely going to be exposed to experiences that have deep psychological imprinting and wounding and loss of betrayal and abandonment in relationships. And then the Virgo constellation overlays it with this persecution, judgment, sense of lack, like I'm not good enough, and so on and so forth. Now imagine trying to actualize themselves in a relationship when they're plagued with these limbic system emotional imprinting regarding all of these outside stimulus that are negative. You can see that we're actually up against something really, really challenging, and we need to clear out all of that stuff first to be able to understand how these things work. Yet at the same time, most of these things are timeless. It's only the prefrontal cortex and the neocortex in itself that kind of categorizes it into a linear fashion. But really, if you think about it in itself, it's just cycles being triggered over and over and over again, that when we actually are in reality and people just trigger us, it's just bringing up that nerve that needs to be in some way, shape, or form healed. So the final thing that I wanted to say to everybody before I jump off onto talking to you about this actual course in itself is the relationship towards things like why is meditation this way, or why do we have to do peace and safe and going into nature? Well, it's super clear. In an environment that doesn't stimulate any of the negative unresolved negative emotions that we've experienced growing up, we would naturally find harmony and sense of interaction in those places of quietness, allowing ourselves to have more positive responses, and then reducing the glands that are in the brain to states where they don't get hijacked by experiences that are freeze and fight and flight and so on and so forth. So it's actually quite fascinating for me, like I said again, and you can hear it in my voice, to make the correlation between these parts of ourselves that are more mystical and the more physical interaction with reality and the challenges that we face on a day-to-day basis. Okay, guys, thanks so much for allowing me to share this with you. I really hope that it inspired you in some way, shape, or form to see it differently. If you're interested in the actual course in itself, in the description below is all the details that you need to know. And I will also, if you stay for after this video, I've got a little brief description of what you'll be getting when you're doing this, okay? Amazing. Have a fantastic week, and I'll speak to you soon. Welcome to this part of the video. Once again, thank you so much for being excited to actually see what I'm actually doing over here. I'm definitely buzzing and really super excited to be sharing this with everybody and really empowering us through the heart. So let me get straight into it for you. This is a soul alignment and empowerment course. And in this workshop, I'm basically wanting to inspire us to be able to see how we can make new life choices and become in touch with our soul's path. And the idea here is to understand the psychological relationship that we have to our physical reality, and then how that goes in line with the soul's actual desires on a more metaphysical sense, and actually bringing the two together to allow for a holistic experience. Okay. And so this will be happening on, it's 2 Sundays. So it's 2 Sunday classes, the 10th of April and the 17th of April. And each meeting will be for an hour and a half. Okay. And so, and you can see the time zones over there, 2 p.m. Eastern Standard, 11 a.m. And that is Pacific. And there is a time converter on this actual file on the website as well. So the idea is to, in the first section, teach about how we can understand these experiences in each of our lives. So I'll give you like a sort of half an hour description of what it is that I'm talking about so that you can teach it yourself. And secondly, then we're going to use your astrology chart to objectify where this happens for you, and so that we can use this opportunity for therapy to express these things and become more in alignment with what is essential for you and that's not. Okay? We'll connect through this program called Zoom, which again, there's a download link on the actual PDF that's linked with all of this material. And it's $200, and this will be for the 2 weeks. Okay, so you'll be getting chart analysis of your karma and your Pluto, so a reading in a sense, looking at your emotional wounds and clarifying and objectifying your past, and finally giving you tools to be able to actually empower you and your soul's desires. Okay? So I really hope that it sounds exciting. And like I said, I've got all the information on my site as well, which will be linked to this video. And I hope to see you there. Amazing. Thank you so much. Take care.